Begin by removing the heat shield from the front carrier. If you have an Evo 8, your car may not have one. Then unbolt both carriers and let the drive shaft hang down. Now, cut the OEM carrier frame off of both bearings, starting with the front carrier. Make a cut on each side. Using a razor blade, cut the frame away from the bearing. Then cut the rubber hanging off the front of the bearing and remove that piece. Lastly, cut the raised portion at the front of the bearing until it's flush with the base layer of rubber at the back of the bearing. But leave the base layer of rubber intact. Your bearing should look like this when you're done. Repeat these steps for the rear carrier. Cut each side of the carrier frame. Then using your razor blade, make the same 3 cuts, removing the frame from the bearing, cutting the front half of rubber off, and making it flush with the base layer of rubber at the back of the bearing. Keep the base layer of rubber intact. Now for the new carriers, start with the front and clamp the top and bottom around the bearing, connecting the two together using the provided Allen bolts. As you tighten the bolts, switch back and forth from left to right so the bolts don't bind in the holes. A small gap may form between the two bushings. This is normal. Repeat this on the rear carrier. Before mounting them to the car, we recommend cleaning the threads on the studs first to avoid damaging the studs or stud adapters. Coating the studs in a little anti-seize is also a good idea. To mount it to the car, place your small gold washers on the OEM studs. Then take a provided stud adapter, put a fender washer on it, an isolation damper facing up. Place it up through the carrier with another isolation damper facing down. Same thing on the other side. Stud adapter, fender washer, isolation damper facing up, through the carrier, and another isolation damper facing down. Thread both adapters onto the studs and tighten them to the car. Repeat these steps on the front carrier. Small washers on the studs, then stud adapters with fender washers, isolation dampers facing up, through the carrier, isolation dampers facing down, and thread them both onto the studs. Tighten and torque all 4 stud adapters and your installation is complete.